So a little while ago, I did a video talking about my opinions on each of the 4 winglets Tui has published, and I touched briefly on Arctic and Foeslayer's relationship and how it basically was the turning point for the entire series. After all, if they hadn't had Darkstalker, the Nightwings likely wouldn't have buried their own culture and fled so far away, which was the reason the Dragonette prophecy came about. Of course, we probably would have still seen events like the War of the Sandwing Succession, but certainly Arc 2 would never have happened, and even Arc 3 would be drastically changed. So the implications of this ill-fated relationship are pretty far-reaching. And here's the thing, I feel really cheated when it comes to Arctic and Foeslayer. Don't get me wrong, in a backwards sort of way, I'm glad things turned out the way they did, or else we never would have gotten the Wings of Fire series that we know and love today. But those two had some really awesome potential, and I feel like I missed out on an adorable couple. Because maybe it's really obvious, but I feel like Arctic and Foeslayer had a lot of potential. And really, the outside forces that affected their relationship are what ruined it. Originally, it seems like the two of them were intending to run off and be hermits together, which, A, adorable, and B, yes sister, that's perfect. But then Foeslayer's mom swoops in and ruins that, which ultimately started them down their path of failure. Arctic was never a bad dragon, I think. I know a lot of people hate him, but honestly, when reading Darkstalker Legends, I never really saw Arctic as a villain. Sure, he was antagonistic at times, and he wasn't a good dad, but it always just felt really bad for Arctic. To me, he just seemed miserable. I mean, Arctic gave up literally everything he'd ever known to be with Foeslayer. She challenged him, and he made the ultimate leap of faith. He left behind his controlling mother and the expectations and the security of his own tribe, and whatever friends he had, all for a new and entirely hostile place. I mean, that's a lot. Arctic showed how willing he was to work for their relationship. And yeah, over time he got bitter and snappy and angry, but come on. He was surrounded 24/7 by dragons who distrusted and hated him. And don't tell me he wasn't aware of the other Nightwings' plot to steal his magic for their own bloodline. Arctic was raised in the scheming atmosphere of court. He knew they wanted his magic, and he still chose Foeslayer. I mean, if I were in his situation and I'd given up literally everything I knew and was familiar with, I'd probably get pretty bitter too over time. So do I blame Foeslayer for the outcome of their relationship? No, not really. I do think Foeslayer could have handled some things better. It seemed like she started off strong, but then the opinions and the plans of her mother derailed her. Instead of moving for her and Arctic's happiness when her mother dangled the possibility of approval in front of Foeslayer's nose, she threw that all away. Had she and Arctic gone off and lived together somewhere away from her mother's poison and the schemes of the Nightwing Court, I really think they would have found lasting happiness. So, yeah, I feel bad for Foeslayer too. She missed out on her happily ever after, just like Arctic did. But, in the same way, I always feel like Foeslayer's choice to give in to her mother was kind of the linchpin that unraveled their happy future together. Consider just for a moment, if they had had a stable, loving relationship, Darkstalker wouldn't have grown up watching his parents fight. He'd have felt safe enough to come forward about his powers, and Arctic could have helped him stabilize them and not overuse them. Of course, Whiteout would still be her beautiful self, but I feel like Whiteout really struggled when her family fought. In her scenes, we always see her freak out the most when those she cares about argue. With a tighter, more secure family unit, I think even Whiteout, obviously the most stable out of the 4 of them, would have had a better childhood. Anyways, that's most of what I wanted to say about Arctic Slayer. It's not a hugely insightful thing to come out with, but I just think that they deserved a lot better. That relationship had really good potential, and it didn't live up to it. Sometimes I feel really, really sorry for Arctic. I would like to talk a little about the art in today's video, though. It feels like ages since I've talked about whatever art technique I've used in my WHATSISFACEs, so let's get back into that a little today. One thing that always speaks to me about drawing Arctic Slayer is this awesome contrast that they have going on with their opposite color palettes. That's where the original version of this poster, drawn in early 2020, was inspired. There's a scene in Darkstalker Legends where the two of them go off to some event together and they play their jewelry off each other. The stark contrast of black and white makes for a really eye-catching piece. I know I've talked a little bit about contrasting and complementary colors before. I personally generally tend toward complementary colors. I like colors that play well together. Complementary color palettes tend to work well for me. Of course, I've never shied away from spots of contrast, I just mostly tend to stick with similar colors. So it's fun to play around with drawings like this, because this poster relies on the contrast of the black and the white to catch my audience's eye, to draw them in and keep them interested. And yes, this is a redraw of that 2020 poster. I still adore the matching opposite jewelry idea, and I love messing around with those contrasts. I did change a few things. The heart is kind of the most notable one. I changed it from a landscape poster to a portrait poster, so that I could add the heart in there and have it work out. And the only thing that I didn't really change was the jewelry. I've never been a great jewelry artist. I don't wear a lot of jewelry. I'm allergic to a lot of fake metals, and I'm too broke for real jewelry, so I've never really seen it a lot, which makes drawing it a little bit hard for me. So yeah, the jewelry stayed a little simplistic. I imagine it was probably a lot more impressive in the scene in the book, but this is what I got. So contrasts are a really great way to create a stark, shocking feel in your pieces. If you're aiming for a discordant tone, contrasts are a really great way to manage that. Complementary colors are more often suited for soft, more positive vibes than contrasting colors. The higher the contrast, the more standoffish the feeling you'll get. Think Harley Quinn's design, for example, that iconic red and black half and half design that makes her stick out so well. I was kind of aiming for that with this, but I also used my softer line art brush because I wanted even to juxtapose these details. Despite the harsh contrasts, I still wanted to have soft line art and shading. 'Tis a piece of many contradictions. So anyways, hope y'all enjoyed this video. I know it's really short, but I just got a new computer, so I've spent all week putting it together and loading software on it and stuff, so I've been crazy busy, and I will talk a little bit more about that at a later date. But I do recognize that this is short. I've been busy. Anyways, what are your thoughts on Arctic Slayer? Do y'all think Arctic got the short end of the stick, or do you think he's just a grumpy, rude dragon by nature? If you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like or a comment, and subscribe for more videos like this one. Also, if you're interested in seeing more of my art or getting merch, you can find links to my DeviantArt and Redbubble in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and please have a wonderful week.
What does perfect even mean? Is there even such a thing? Ooh, can we switch up all the rules and imagine a utopia? Darling, I'm just so fed up with these expectations. They keep weighing me